Hello and welcome to another vlog as we continue through our Whole Life, Whole Bible series. Now, the focus of today's reflection comes from the book of John, which is found in the New Testament, and it comes from chapter 20, which shares the narrative of Jesus' resurrection. In fact, today's reflection is entitled, Alleluia, He is Risen. Alleluia meaning praise the Lord. And that's exactly what we do. We praise the Lord for Jesus' resurrection. So John chapter 20 verses 1 then 19 to 20 says this. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. On the evening of that first day of the week, where the disciples were together, with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side, and the disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. I don't know about you, but for me, this week has definitely felt like autumn. From the rainy days to the darker mornings and the earlier nights, the suddenly needing a coat, and the most mahoosive pumpkin spice latte I had earlier this week. This week has definitely felt like autumn. And whenever we reach this time of year, I always think of the little walk that we used to take to school when I was very little. And the path we used to take during autumn used to become covered in helicopter seeds, or sycamore seeds if you're slightly more green fingered than I am. And I remember my dad showing me that how if you drop them from a height, they spin and they look like a helicopter. And I remember just being mind blown about this. Now, I'm pretty sure my dad probably regretted that because I then proceeded to pick up every seed on the journey home, and I'm sure it made it a very long walk home. But my point being, if you look around at autumn, we often think of the leaves falling and the trees going bare. And that's what my walk from home from school was. It was the trees losing their leaves. So you might look around during this autumn time and think to yourself of the end of things, the death of things. The leaves are dying, the nights are drawing in. So perhaps you would think of death. Yet it's not. It's actually new creation. See, with each of these helicopter seeds that fell, new trees could grow. So with these new trees, new creation can happen. From death, there is new creation. And that's what we see in this passage here. What looks like death is a new creation. See, the disciples are together in a room and they're considering the death of Jesus. Yet, as it says in verse 19, Jesus came in, stood among them, and with this, new creation came. With the resurrection of Jesus, new creation happens. Because with this resurrection comes new life where salvation can be received, leading to eternal life. And also with this resurrection, there will be a new creation when Jesus returns again. In fact, today's reflection quotes the author Tom Wright, who summarizes it perfectly when he says, "With Jesus of Nazareth, there is not simply a new religious possibility, nor simply a new ethic or a new way of salvation, but a new creation." It says in verse 20, the disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. And for me, this news of new creation is full of joy. But that brings us to the question of, so what? How does that impact me today? And that's when we need to remember the title of this series. The whole of the Bible impacts the whole of our lives. And again, Tom Wright is right, pardon the pun, when he says this. Because the early Christians believed that the resurrection had begun with Jesus and would be completed in the great final resurrection on the last day, they believed that God had called them to work with Him in the power of the Spirit to implement the achievement of Jesus and thereby to anticipate the final resurrection in personal and political life, in mission and holiness. Or to put it simply, those who follow Jesus, who declare that He is Lord and believe in His resurrection, are called to be whole life disciples. Whole life disciples who are being given the responsibility of transforming the present in light of the future. Well, that's a pretty big task, but one of the best parts of all of this, that we do this with Jesus by our side. So as we proclaim who Jesus is and the good news he brings, we do it not only for him, but with him, which to me brings a whole lot of comfort and a will to take this challenge on. So I leave you with a question today. How will you take on that challenge today? I leave you with that thought, and I hope that you have a fab day, whatever you are doing.